This is HBR News number 415. Barbie is not secretly based. Man self-deletes after struggle session, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hi-ho! Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is HBR News.
Hi-ho! It's delayed, okay, but it makes all the sense.
Hi-hos! And also our subscribers and followers. Welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Mike J. and Dr. Randercam. Hannah Wallen is not in this week because she has strep throat. Hopefully she will be better by Thursday, and you will see her for HBR Talk.
So some F's in the chat for Hannah. In the chat for Hannah.
Give Hannah some support. So you are joined this week by myself, Brian Martinez, Dr. Randercam, Mike J, and JoJo, who is tuckered out from doing pupper activities all day. But that's not what this is about. We're going to be talking about the news today, or the news of the week. This week, we're going to be talking about the box office results, or at least the way that it's been reported by mainstream media, of the Barbie movie's opening weekend. A Toronto man commits suicide after a struggle session, which is kind of like there's an overarching theme to this that I want to sort of touch on, which is called it is a something that we've been dealing with called political nullification, which I'm gonna go into a bit. Another man challenges.
Perhaps I could translate for you the word struggle into two different languages. In German, it is called Kampf. In Arabic, it is called jihad.
Yes. I want to know. I know what it. I want to hear it in like whatever Chinese language that is appropriate. So
the Great Leap Forward.
yeah. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So anyway, yeah. So another
Dojang is struggle in China.
Bojang. That's right.
No, do with a D.
Dojang. Oh, okay, cool. Anyway, another man challenges folks to try that in a small town, which is also related and more. So stick around; it's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be a good show today. I have lots of thoughts on things that I wasn't sure I was going to even talk about until like we came to this point. Hello, Teal Deer in the chat. Shout out for Teal Deer. By the way, I have this. I don't know if you saw it, Mike. So, by the way, guys, Mike and Lauren were staying at my place over the weekend, and we hung out here, and we drank, and we did other things, and we sang songs, and it was a really, really good time. But I have this thing that I bought years ago. I was in a Macy's in downtown Chicago, and I was just like walking through there because you go from one train to another, and you can like walk through this sort of underground pathway, and there's like shops. It's sort of like a mall, and there was this gift shop. Somebody I was with was looking around, and I saw this teal deer, literally, because it was around Christmas time, and so there was this deer, and it had like teal glitter all over it, and I bought it because I thought of teal deer, and I have it in the living room, and I was wondering, Mike, you might not have noticed it, but it's kind of hard to miss. Next time I'll bring it, and I'll put it on the JoJo cam so that you guys can see it, or maybe I'll do it when Teal Deer comes on, because he's going to be coming on the show to discuss some stuff with us soonish, so maybe I'll do that. But anyway, big digression. I'm sorry, but yes, you did see the teal deer. Okay, so yeah, you saw it. Anyway, so we're gonna be discussing that for the topics, and please stick around for the patron-only show. On this week's patron-only show, I saw this interesting article from our friends at The Guardian entitled "Gen Z Want to Work Lazy Girl Jobs. Who can blame them?" by this lovely young woman thing named Daisy Jones. And I guess there's a new TikTok trend that sees young women eschewing hustle culture to focus on life outside of work. Perhaps they are beating capitalism at its own game. So we will read through that article and find out what Daisy Jones has in store for us. What kind of revolutionary stuff. Yeah, I know. I was gonna do something on Snow White. Because I thought it'd be lighter and less cringe, but I couldn't find anything that had what I was looking for yet, other than this little interview that the main actress did, and I don't think there's much. There isn't a lot of meat on that bone. So I thought this might
extract all the meat in like 2 minutes if you give it to me.
From that interview.
They're Snow White thing? Like taking Snow White and stripping literally everything the original had away.
Yeah.
The dwarfs, they've removed all but one of them. Now they're magical forest creatures of vaguely brown descent, non-binary individuals.
And you can see
indigenous.
Why they did that. If they
Snow
did
White.
If they did go ahead and employ 7 dwarf actors, then you can only imagine the backlash they would have got from
Peter Dinklage would be pissed.
Well, Peter Dinklage for one, but he's speaking for the rest of the
vertically challenged community. Oh yeah, right.
Like you can't employ 7 dwarves. That's exploiting 7 dwarves. You can only exploit 1 dwarf. That's the acceptable amount of dwarf to exploit.
7 dwarf actors are out there like, what the fuck, dude? You just cost us a job.
Yeah. Although, you know, I've heard the Peter Dinklage interview, and I just want to say, I don't think he was offended. I think he was trying to crack a joke, and I think everybody took it seriously. And because, frankly, like, if you guys don't know, Peter Jackson managed to cast a lot of dwarves, and none of them were actually dwarves. But he made it work. So, I mean, if he could do it with actual normal-sized human beings, I don't see why they couldn't do the same. And I think it might have been better. So, but whatever. I think that the Peter Dinklage thing is going to be used as an excuse for them not to actually do, you know, the way that they did hobbits and dwarves, right? So they can
further change yet another thing. So they can, they're going to make, you know, Snow White the most identifying characteristic about her now gone.
Yeah.
Because, you know, despite, I mean, you know, I'm sure Sigurd's a nice lady, but
yeah,
she's not Snow White in the skin.
There's
sorry.
some coffee in that cream.
Very much so.
Sooner or later, you're going to see a remake of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah.
Disney doesn't own it right now, but when they do, there will be no munchkins. There will just be black people.
She's going to land in Detroit.
But anyway, so, and the last thing I'll say about Snow White is that I don't see how Gal Gadot is less attractive than whoever's playing Snow White.
Yeah, no, seriously.
There's like this, it was the worst idea.
Of all the shit you're trying to pull, this is the most offensive.
Yeah, come on. I don't care what you guys think about Gal Gadot as a person, but she is gorgeous, and there's no way that there's anyone else that can measure up to that.
What if I told you Gal Gadot is mid?
We'll get to that.
I don't speak Zoomer, so I don't know what you're saying. But one last thing.
He be bussin' for real.
One last thing. This is what they're doing now, and I think this is probably the most egregious example of taking a property and stripping literally every identifying characteristic away from us. You know, Hollywood is pointing to a pile of shit, and they're saying, that's a hamburger. And I'm like, no, that's a pile of shit. They're like, well, yeah, we replaced the bun with shit, and the meat with shit, and the pickles, onions, tomato, ketchup, mayonnaise, mustard, special sauce with shit, but it's still a hamburger. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, it's a pile of shit. That's what I call the shit of Theseus.
It's Snow Latina and the 7 kinds of Chipotle sauce.
Okay. I think we've said enough offensive things about Snow White that it will offend itself. Yeah, no, it's fine. We got it. And I think, again, I could say more, but we should move on. But anyway, if you guys want to join us in the after show for this lovely Gen Z want to work lazy girl jobs, who can blame them article from The Guardian, and the clearly normal and not at all queer woman Daisy Jones, join us in the patron-only show by becoming a patron, becoming a badger. And to do that, go to feedthebadger.com and set up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, and you'll have access to a whole shit ton of extra content. If you give it higher levels, you can even participate in the conversation. So that's feedthebadger.com. And to join us, and we also have our monthly fundraiser to help pay for me, because this is basically my job right now, and also Hannah, and I think that's it right now, but it's just to keep the show going. So, and that is feedthebadger.com/support. Anything will do. No matter, there is no donation too small. All right. And if you don't want to find us one day gone from the internet, please go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com to see our archives of everything that we have done. Okay, with all that done, let's get into today's stories. So, I mean, Mike J, you said that you said that you started them, so you might have some input on some of these, because what I did was I made some bullet points of things that I wanted to touch on, and some quotes from other articles. So, you know, if you want to, feel free to add. But we're going to start with this story. This is Toronto principal, pictured here, Richard Biltzow, I think, took his own life after a diversity, equity, and inclusion struggle session. Biltzow, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it, was an educator for 24 years. In 2021, the Toronto District School Board administrators bullied him, according to a lawsuit by the defendant, repeatedly referring to his comments as examples of white supremacy. So this is a quote from the National Post. His sin, in the eyes of facilitators at the Kojo Institute, was his questioning of their claim that Canada was a more racist place than the United States. Canada wasn't perfect, he said, but it still offers a lot of good. For the rest of the training session and throughout a follow-up training session the week after, facilitators repeatedly referred to Biltzow's comments as examples of white supremacy. The experience was humiliating, particularly because Biltzow placed a great emphasis on equality and anti-discrimination during his career. So this guy was a progressive. He was woke. Not as woke as the people who bullied him, but he was, you know, he would identify in that way.
I don't know if I would identify him as woke. He just seemed to be an upstanding guy.
Well,
like before they've co-opted these things, these were examples of traits you wanted to have.
Well, I guess if we only see woke as a pejorative, I'm saying that there are people like Brett Weinstein, for example, who would still consider himself to be a progressive, that have crossed, like, you know, an invisible boundary with the cult, and he gets attacked and called a conservative as a result, which I'm going to get into on that. And this guy, I think, is the same, because they were saying, and I think there's another thing too that could be at play here that I will touch on after this is over. It's sort of like Canadians' views on America. There's another level to that, and I think if there's any Canadians or people who know Canadians in the chat, you might kind of know where I'm going with that. But we're gonna
get right into that once we're done with this riot.
Yeah. So the TDSB distanced himself from him. One colleague thanked him for modeling the discomfort. A day or two after the second training session, so he was basically going to training sessions, i.e. struggle sessions, Biltzow fell into a mental health crisis, spending a month away from work. He won a workers' compensation claim for his loss of earnings, but the board refused to investigate the bullying incident. When he returned to work, the TDSB refused to reinstate him in the role he was in prior to taking leave and revoked his work contract for the next year. He also was disinvited for attending a graduation ceremony. Biltzow filed a lawsuit against TDSB administrators. TDSB launched a subsequent lawsuit against Kojo Institute, but later told the National Post it planned to discontinue that claim. Friends and family of Biltzow say he was anxious and anticipated backlash over the legal proceedings, and last week he succumbed to his distress. Biltzow was a specialist in adult education, working in schools where students were age 18 and above and often faced unique barriers to academic success, having not graduated on time in the regular program for having recently immigrated to Canada. He was well liked by many of his students. So he worked with, you know, people who were immigrants or people who struggled, like adults who struggled with education. So clearly not racist, because immigrants are likely not like you, or at least there's a pretty good chance of it. There's a lot of people who emigrate to Canada from, for example, the Caribbean, as well as India and other parts of the world that are not Europe. So, from the National Post, quote, aside from his work as an educator, Biltzow was an advocate. He was a member of the Toronto chapter of the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, an advocacy organization dedicated to civil rights and anti-discrimination, which he took the lead in establishing. In education, specifically, he was a member of SOS TDSP, an organization working to preserve the district merit-based admission system for specialty programs. The TDSP recently began using a lottery system to admit students to the ire of many.
So, if I have this about right, the offence this man committed was not to insinuate any prejudice, let alone to express any racism, never mind to incite any violence. His offence was to, shall we say, float the idea that Canada is not necessarily worse than the US, along the already dubious metric of what the woke like to call racism. Needless to say, this would not be an offence if it was voiced within the US. In the US, it is considered progressive to consider the US to be the world's worst nation. In Canada, it is considered progressive to consider Canada to be the world's worst nation. In the UK, it is considered progressive to consider the UK to be the what do you get?
Yeah.
And from there we can draw lightly on what we really mean on when we refer to what is quote unquote considered progressive. And what we mean is, and I'm sorry to flog a dead horse when I do this, but oikophobia. Oikophobia is oikophobia as a Gnostic inversion of human nature and of nature on the whole. It appears to be part of human nature and all nature to have some kind of in-group preference. All of nature is an arms race between various adapted forms of in-group preference. The social contagion we call woke is the process of turning nature completely upside down on the basis that nature must surely be wrong. And so instead of nations competing to be the best, competing to be the most proud and singular and independent, you get basically the opposite. You get this downward purity spiral where every country competes to be the most masochistically self-hating and self-destructive. And it has to be said that despite the very stiff competition, Canada is winning on that particular battleground. Is there a developed country, an ostensibly developed country in living memory that has not carried out more contempt for its own citizens than Justin Trudeau's Canada? You can't have freedom of speech. You can't have medical choice. You can't complain about your lack of medical choice, or else you can't have your money or your bank account, and you cannot, under any circumstances, defend Canada. You must defend the Trudeau regime, which for the sake of argument, we're calling Canada, but you cannot defend the outdated notion of what was called Canada before the glorious dear leader took over the notion we call Canada, even though they called the same thing. I hope it's as clear as can be. The Canadian government is good, but the Canadian people is bad. And it's the same in every other Western nation. Our people are racist, sexist assholes, but our government is going to fix it. And and needless to say, when we say we're helping Ukraine, we mean we're helping the Ukrainian people, even though we're only helping the Ukrainian government. And when we say we're fighting Russia, we mean we're fighting the Russian government, even though we're only hurting the Russian people. Your guess is as good as mine, folks. Do leave a comment below. I apologize for the tangent. No, I don't.
No,
you get what I'm saying.
You don't have to. I wanted to add something else too. I think that, like, if I consider that this man, and And a lot of he wasn't just like a decent guy. He was part of an organization that was, interested in like some form of equity. He may not have been like as far out as the people who bullied him, but they were probably on the same page until they appeared to cross a line in his eyes by saying that Canada is even worse than America, and he was like, well, I don't think that that's necessarily true. Now, there is a question that this raises with me. Is that one, is that suggesting that America is in fact worse than Canada? Or is it suggesting that America and Canada are probably not as bad as these people believe? Now, I understand that, and this is not true of all Canadians. I don't mean to generalize, but one of the things I used to talk with my wife about, who is from Canada, is what Canadian identity is. Because when she came to the States to be with me, she noticed, like, especially in Chicago, and Chicago's not particularly patriotic, right? Because it's a pretty corrupt city, but there are people who celebrate their holidays, and there's a lot of people who own their own businesses. And she was like, oh, I've never seen so many like mom and pop shops and small businesses around here and stuff, because they don't really have them in Canada. And I was like saying, well, what do you think the Canadian like identity is? Like, what is it? Because in America we have a kind of somewhat, maybe not necessarily completely agreed upon idea about what America is, and Brits, they are, there is a Britishness, that or an Englishness even that they acknowledge. I mean, I think all of this stuff is being erased, right? Like, it's being sort of pushed aside, but there is something that was there, right? And she said that in the terms of how she was educated and what she was exposed to, she was like, it's funny, I think that Canadian identity is just that we're not America. Like, we're better than them. We're more polite, we're more giving, we're just better. We do land acknowledgments, right, for the indigenous people and all that. And at this time, she was still kind of like more on the left, right, let's say, at the time. And that was what she believed. And as time went on, she started to appreciate American patriotism. And I know that for some it's obnoxious, right, because we're really loud about that. But I think that I think the Canadians do believe, and I think they are taught to believe, that as bad as they are, they're not as bad as America, because America's worse, right? And the British do the same thing. Oh, you guys had the slavery, you guys had the Jim Crow, you guys had this. And I think all that shit is blown out of proportion. It's all done to make America look awful, even though everyone keeps fucking coming here. So I have to wonder about that as well. So it's almost like this guy was kind of on that boat. If I might be wrong, I don't know, because he's not around anymore. But that wasn't enough for these people. And that brings me to the other thing I wanted to mention. Struggle sessions are a form of psychological torture. They are only effective on people who are nothing like what they are accused of. This guy is not the person they're saying he is. That's why it was so distressing for him. That's why, he probably apologized. He probably tried to figure out what he could do to get back in the good graces of his colleagues, of his peers, and it wasn't enough. And I think they drove him to this point. Now, what they really wanted was for him to simply submit and just do as he's told. But he went off the deep end and took his own life. And that's really unfortunate. And I'm really sorry about that. But they did that to him. We have to start acknowledging that struggle sessions and all this cancel culture shit and all that, that is psychological torture. It is there to harm you. It does. Now, I'm not saying it does physical harm. Obviously, no. But that is the purpose, and it only works on people who care about how they are perceived. And so the only way you can beat it is to not care, because you have to understand these people are bad actors. They're not actually concerned about the things that they're accusing you of. Just like feminists, right? They'll accuse you of misogyny, but they don't actually care about misogyny. They just know it works on you because they know that you care about women and you care about being called a misogynist. That's why I refuse to use that word. Because I know that it's their language. If you use their language, then you are playing by their rules, and you will lose because they have rigged the game for themselves. So I'm really upset that, sad that this guy took his own life. I think it's a shame, but again, if you run with wolves, you're going to get bitten. He probably didn't know how bad it was, and now here we are. And this is another thing you have to remember too. No one is safe when you're in that camp and you're participating in that. Even over here with us, right? There are people who will become purity testers, and there'll be a spiral, and someone is not going to be, like anti-woke enough or woke enough or whatever, and they're going to end up getting bullied and pushed out, and we have to stop that, because that is what they want. That is what they want. So that's what I want to say about that. I got more to say on this whole thing. I have this bullet point list I made talking about political nullification and all of the things that it is, but I have two more stories that are sort of related, because I want to explain to you how political nullification can be fought against, which is why I have this Jason, what's his name? The country singer guy. I have that and also the Barbie movie, because I think it also can work in the opposite direction. So, and what I mean is
stuff to say about this.
Yeah,
too,
go ahead, Mike.
Switch topics. I don't want to pretend to know what was in this guy's head or in this guy's soul. I'm only going based on what I've seen people say about him. And for all intents and purposes, he was a decent man.
I'm sure he was.
They had several of his colleagues say things like, he was always compassionate, caring. He believed about giving people second chances. He did not care what circumstances you came from. He was always willing to help. He made me feel like a rock star, no matter what time of the day it was. He always said hi to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear that, he had some pushback on this. So, even if he was with it to a certain extent, he clearly had problems with where they were going with this. And to call this a case of bullying, I believe does not do this man's death justice. This wasn't just a case of bullying. They stripped a position away from this man. Mm-hmm. They cost him prestige. They cost him a livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just bullying. That's not just, banter. That's not just someone saying mean words to you. That's someone using their position to strike at you.
Yeah.
And about these things, you want to talk about dog whistles. The biggest dog whistle you should hear is consulting firm.
Oh yeah.
Once you hear that, get your shit ready to go, because you don't participate with this. Just don't do it. They don't have a problem with racism. They don't have a problem with sexism or any of these other istophobes. Their problem is that you exist.
Mm-hmm.
That is their problem with you. And you deciding to play along with this, they're going to weaponize your decency against you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go along with it. Just say, no, I'd rather not. And if that's what ends up costing you your job, that is so much better of going along with this and letting them actually know what's going on with you, and then getting lambasted as this horrible monster.
Yeah.
And that's really what these groups are. These groups are just monsters.
Absolutely. It's a cult. And that's really, actually, that's the way you beat them. I think that if you can provide significant evidence that this is a religion, then you can get it out of all of this shit. In the same way that they always try to get, they use the same arguments against other people that they don't like. Namely Christians, let's be real, that's who gets attacked when it comes to religious folks. So, but yes, I agree, Mike. I think he was a decent man. I think that most people, when they get involved with this, they just think this is the way you do it, right? This is, like that, and that is all completely fair. But you, like, the lesson here is that you have to have a line, and you have to, you can't let these people essentially torture you this way, because that's what it is. Especially when they cancel you, because that's what. I already talked about this last week. The difference between boycotts and cancellations is that boycotts are, I don't want to participate in or buy your product, so I'm not going to spend my money on you because that's my choice, because that's my money. And cancellation is, you shouldn't be allowed to exist, so we're gonna get you fired, we're gonna get you unpersoned, we're gonna debank you, we're going to essentially drive you out of polite society completely.
Yeah,
There's
if you want to buy Bud Light, hey, more power to you.
Yeah.
I hear there's a lot of it in stores right now.
Yeah, and it's very
But
cheap.
I'm not going to buy it.
Right.
That's the difference between cancel culture and a boycott.
That's exactly right. It is that simple. It is that simple. So, anyway, so I will have a poll, but I'm not going to set it up yet because I want to get through a little bit more of this. And I want to get your thoughts on this political nullification thing that I'm looking at. But I have. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this gentleman's unfortunate suicide?
I hope his family and his estate take these people to the cleaners.
Yeah, I
hope
agree.
it's so bad that they have to disband this little consulting firm, this little committee that they've cobbled together for themselves, and I hope they are never allowed to do this to another individual ever again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so I got some super chows right now, and I am using... well, let me just go ahead and do the super chows here. So I have some from like a couple days ago. I'm going to read those out too. So Brian the Filthy Liberal gives us $10 and says, thank you for the advocacy on the Caitlin Moran maintaining frame. If more people realize men's well-being is a nonpartisan issue, I think it helps the cause. P.S. I personally give props to Caitlin Moran for taking the side of Camille Paglia and defending men in the monk debates. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Caitlin Moran should... my concern is that she's going to control the conversation. I'm going to be honest. That's my concern, because feminists, when they see that there's an opportunity for them to make money or take charge of a conversation, they're going to do it. And I think that working with feminists is... I wouldn't work with her, I'll just put it that way. That's just me. You guys do what you want. I'm not working with her. Okay, thank you, Brian the Filthy Liberal. Amasang gives us $5. Thank you, Amasang, and says, fuck you, EA, you killed Ultima. Fuck you, the Spoony one. I think that was because I was playing an EA game over the weekend. I was streaming it, and it needed like a gigantic patch for no fucking reason.
I'm saying Marcus. That's what plays out in my head every time I hear your username.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just me.
Just letting you know.
So it's not just you. Yeah.
No. It's a Michael Jackson song.
I know it. Yeah, of course.
I believe it's the first song from Thriller. Sorry.
You want to be starting something. It's starting something, isn't it? So you want to be starting something.
It's the first track off Thriller.
Yeah.
And it ends in I'm saying Marcus.
Mama say, Mama sa, Mama kusa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's want to be starting something. Yeah.
So yes, it's want to be starting something. Yeah, it's good. It's a good song.
Nobody knows what it means, but it means some.
It doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, if
bullshit.
you can't have a baby, then don't have a baby. Yeah. I think there's a lesson in there. Okay. But anyway, so let me do the next super child. Lauren, you want to sit in with us? I'll add you to the panel here.
She just got in. She's dancing around.
Oh yeah, do what you gotta do.
You got a song in my head now.
No, we were singing over the weekend, guys. It was a lot of fun. We did Walk Like an Egyptian, and my wife was like, I never heard the lyrics of this song. They're fucking weird as shit.
Look at the lyrics of that song. They're so fucked up.
Yeah, right. Oh, Jojo, are you okay? Oh, he's having a dream. He's twitching. Oh. Plain Dane gives us $5 and says, hey HBR, I've reached out to Coach Castle and asked if he would do a live stream with you. He has fitness YouTube channel called Castle's Corner, biomechanical bodybuilding, and more. Recently, he started posting on his community page anti-feminist memes and comments. That's why I asked him if he would reach out to HBR. Hope to see him on. I did get an email. I don't know if it was from him or from someone else recommending him, but I did get an email. I haven't responded to it yet. But thank you, Plain Dane, if you're listening, because I know this is from yesterday. Oh no, this was from this morning. So thank you, Plain Dane, for that. And then we got, well, okay, hold on. Somebody, it's Richard B. I think he wants me to play this sound, because every time he does this. So Richard B. says his name is John Cena.
And his name is John Cena.
Okay. And he gives us $100. Thank you so much. Very nice.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Those sounds are coming through horribly.
Is this not why you were here?
Hardly.
Yeah, there might be. I'm sorry. There might be something wrong.
I hope they're coming through better on the stream.
They should be coming through on the stream fine. I don't know
But
what's
we
going
got a
on.
big stretch out of JoJo. That's all that matters.
Oh yeah, he did give us a big stretch. And he gives $100 and then $5 in the same, and says waiting for the race swapped Tarzan to come out. Ooh,
That's probably gonna be spicy.
They're probably not going to make that movie. I think they're just going to act like it doesn't exist, or they're going to make a whole different film where Tarzan is hunted and killed by highly advanced Wakandans because he's appropriating or something, or he's like invading. I don't know. They'll figure something out. Maybe they'll make him a woman. If you do that, then you can get away with all of it. Just make him a woman, and you're done. Make her like a South Korean woman. That'll really confuse them.
And Jane will become John. And it will all make perfect sense.
Or Jane will stay Jane, and then we'll get even more points, right? The DEI will be through the roof. Okay, but anyway, so thank you for the super chows, guys. Appreciate it. And we are going to get into the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. All right, next, we're going to be talking about Barbie. So, full disclosure, I have not seen the film. I really don't want to watch it. I've heard horrible things, but it is making a lot of money. And I gotta like at least acknowledge that and maybe like give a mention about it. So last week, we talked about on the show how badly Hollywood is doing. Disney is selling like a third of their what they own, I guess. Like they're putting it on market. Nobody's watching their shit. It's failing all left, right, and center. There's flop after flop. They're spending so much money. Meanwhile, smaller projects like what was that one? Sound of Freedom. They're like made on nothing, and they're making shit tons of money. And Sisu,
pound for pound this month, pound for pound this year. By the way,
yeah,
The Sound of Freedom has made the most money. If you take the total budget and do some math there with the amount of money they've made more than the Disney or than the Mario movie has.
Yeah, because they didn't
started
spend
like
as much.
$12 million budget, and they made. Let's see. Let's open Box Office Mojo. The numbers may have changed since I last checked.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are they sitting at right now? 124.4 million. So they've made back about what? That's 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Mario movie hasn't done that. They made a lot of money. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But on a budget of, let's see, where they at. So on a budget of 100 million, they've made 1.3. So that's pretty good too. That's good too.
It's good. And I mean, again, there were some good things, like Mario did well, John Wick 4 did well, Mission Impossible is doing well, and Sisu did really well. It was made on almost nothing. I think it was like a $4 million or $6 million budget for that movie. So there are good things coming out, but of course the mainstream Hollywood world is not gonna promote that. They're not gonna acknowledge that. And so I had this article from comicbookmovie.com that the headline reads, and you can't read it because JoJo's blocking, but I think you prefer that anyway. Barbie score's biggest opening day of 2023 has already passed 150 million globally. Mike, were you going to say something? I know you were trying to speak up, but
I have a long ass thing of this thing to say about a thing. I'm going to let you get through your thing.
All right, let me get through my thing. Yeah. So anyway, so when you look at the landscape of Hollywood, it's not good, right? Flops everywhere, failing, and now there's like a writer's strike, and not just a writer's strike, but I guess there's a lot of other people in the business that are striking, and Hollywood actors, the actors are striking, whatever, and Hollywood's history of throw money at it until it like makes money, it doesn't seem to be working. The DEI shit is killing them. Nobody has talent. They're afraid they're going to be replaced by AI and all of that. Meanwhile, smaller projects that are just like getting back to basics are doing really well, right? Or the people who just ignore the bullshit, and they just try to deliver a product that people want, like the Mario Brothers movie, for example, or John Wick. So with that, you would think that if you didn't know there was a strike, considering the quality of film, you would think that they've been on strike for years because everything's been shit. But the Hollywood Reporter says about this film, Barbie, the summer box office went nuclear. Filmmaker Greta Gerwig's female-fueled Barbie opened to a historic $155 million domestically, a threshold usually reserved for male-driven superhero fare or marquee IP, such as the final Harry Potter movie. It came in well ahead of an expected $90 million to $110 million and helped fuel one of the biggest weekends in history. Barbie, which brings to life Mattel's iconic fashion doll, is also strutting to big numbers overseas. The pick launched to an impressive 182 million from 70 markets for a global bow of 337 million against a $145 million production budget. In North America, Barbie scored the biggest domestic start ever for a movie directed by a woman, solo or otherwise. That's the first weekend, though. So I gotta say this because I think it's very important. I think most of you guys know this. Barbie succeeded because of the marketing. And how did the marketing succeed? They basically lied about what was in the movie. Completely lied about it. Yeah. So, go ahead, Mike. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say what you were about to say, and I hope I'm not treading on your parade, but I have to say it's tiresome to hear so many people weigh in with this lukewarm take of, lol, I'm not going to talk about the Barbie movie. I'm not a child. I'm not a woman. You're gay if you talk about the Barbie movie, blah, 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 whatever. This is coming from a lot of people who have made it their business to talk about the excesses of modern gender ideology. Every week, if not every day, you find multiple examples of how this woke nonsense has manifested in yet another facet of broader society. Oh, look, some chicks have been pretending to be NPCs on TikTok. Ice cream, yum, blah, blah, blah. Let's all talk about it. Oh, look, children are being...
Gang. Okay, sorry.
I see. Oh, look, children are being indoctrinated into intersectionalist, feminist dogma against their will. Let's talk about it. Well, here you go. I don't care about the pornography that schools are showing to children. I'm not a child. I'm not the target audience, so fuck it. I can't possibly understand the source material, and I would be cringe and gay if I tried to. Bitch, snap out of it. This is what's happening now, and on a large scale. It's a piece of history. Students of the applicable arts will be discussing this Barbie movie and its implications for maybe 2 years or maybe 200 years. You can't know the historical significance of something until we find ourselves in the aforementioned future. So you need to find the parts of contemporary anthropology that most disgust you. Because those that disgust you most are the excesses that are most probably going to be in the history books. And you need to stare into that abyss. Not for long enough for the abyss to stare back, just for long enough for you to briefly report on the nature of that abyss and move on to the next current thing. If you just want to get on with your life and ignore what's going on in Hollywood and in the news, by all means, please do ignore it. But if it's someone else's job to pay attention to these things, or just their hobby or their passion to pay attention to these things, then let them get on with it, especially if it's also your job or hobby or passion, and you're supposed to be talking about this exact sort of thing too. Oh, generic internet personality whom I keep seeing on social media scoffing at this whole affair like it's beneath you. It's like a feminist saying, I'm not going to watch Sound of Freedom. It's a man film about some big macho man who thinks he's going to save the innocent from some nefarious conspiracy of powerful entities, which is obvious nonsense. I'm going to stick with patriarchy theory. No, I am not comparing feminist patriarchy conjecture with the notion that child trafficking exists, not equilaterally. I'm just saying, it doesn't hurt to actually watch the things being talked about. It doesn't hurt to watch a movie that was not intended for you. In fact, you probably should, in the event that such a movie might be shown to your children, or your nieces and nephews, or just the children of your friends at any point in the next 10 years, shall we say. Like, you can't just go, well, this doesn't matter to me right now. Well, look into the slightest part of the future. Like, you know what I mean? This seems fucking stupid, but the stupidest things are the things that future historians will talk about, and this is among the stupidest things.
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that the people who would say, well, you know, you're not a child, why do you care, are people, mostly women, that have no interest in having children, so they're immediately less invested. It's the people who have children that are invested. So when you convince a majority or a significant number of women that they should not have children or start families, then they will become less interested in protecting women, or children, that is, because they don't have them. So they're not invested in society at all. They're only invested in themselves because there's nobody else. So they're not going to care. You see? And they're going to live as children themselves. So what's the target audience for this movie? And this is important, okay? I know that the Barbie movie seems like it is for children, but it's rated PG-13. And from what I have not seen the movie. Full disclosure, okay? I have no interest in it. Allison says we should watch it so that we can talk about it. I dread that, but I suppose if it's necessary, we will. But I have seen the entire story written out and spoken about. I know what happens in the movie. I know what the point is. So I'm aware of it. And I am also aware that despite it being a movie that looks like children should be going, it is rated PG-13. There is an MF bomb in it. And there are several, let's say, statements about things like vaginas and penises. So there's stuff that's, I think it's kind of inappropriate because the audience, while it was rated PG-13, the majority of people who went were single mothers and their daughters. And I'm talking 8-year-old girls sometimes.
See,
so
I don't even think, I'm not sure that's completely true. Because
why?
The way they've marketed this...
They marketed it like anybody could watch it. Yeah,
well, that's the whole thing. The trailer literally started with, this movie is for everyone that loves Barbie.
Yes.
And then the very next frame, this movie is also for everyone who hates Barbie.
Yes.
And then they really rode the fucking Barbenheimer
meme
advertisement train, meme train.
That was fucking astroturfed as fuck. Go ahead.
It was. But hey, you know what? Honestly, props to them for pulling this off. I can't be too mad at the hustle. This is just right place, right time. They decided everything about this.
Yeah.
And just like I said, the marketing was genius. The fact that they pushed Ryan Gosling to the forefront to get in, like, hey, you guys that liked, you liked the movie Drive, right? You like Ryan Gosling from Drive. Guess who's gonna be in the Barbie movie? It's Ryan Gosling. And they basically took Margot Robbie, put a second layer of duct tape on her mouth, and shoved her in a fucking closet.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew she was gonna blab to everyone about how this was going to be a big feminist masterpiece. And so it was complete bait and switch when people got in there, and you even have mainstream rags saying stuff like, this would have been an okay movie if they just maybe toned down the gender ideology bit just a little bit.
Yeah, except that was the point. So if the goal would be to tone down the patriarchy theory and the feminism, they wouldn't have made the movie, because that's why they made the movie.
If there is one silver
Yeah, go ahead.
If there is one silver lining, I do enjoy how, and maybe you were getting to this, I do enjoy how their message has kind of been corrupted a little bit.
Yeah, like everybody's
Because
like
more of the
like
people
talking
latched
about
on
Ken.
to the character of Ken.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like every now and then a movie will try to do this and it will completely backfire. There have been countless times this has occurred. The only one I can think of in recent memory is you have the movie Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
What is the movie Finding Nemo? The movie is about a clownfish whose dad attempts to find him after he gets lost and learns he's being trapped in a dentist's aquarium and wants to free him. It's like, oh, that's such a great little message, you know, trying to free his son, rescue his son. That's great. Do you know what one of the side effects of that movie was?
No, what?
The demand for clownfish spiked.
Oh yeah, sure, I can see that.
Because children saw the movie and went, I want a clownfish, I want a clownfish. Well, what are you going to do with that clownfish there, little Timmy? I'm going to put him in an aquarium. It's like, well, isn't that kind of going
From
against...
this moment on, you
what
will
the-
now be known as Sharkbait. Sharkbait! Ooh-ha-ha.
But isn't that kind of like against what the idea of the movie was? Nah, never mind, Jimmy. Here's your clownfish.
Yeah. I know,
But
I know.
it's funny. People latched on to Ken, even though he was supposed to, according to the writer-director, just sort of be this nothing, be this sort of placeholder, this supporting character. But they tried to make him a bad guy in it, but he came off as the only character that has a fucking arc in this movie.
Well, that's what they always end up doing. So like that happens in every woke movie because they're like, oh, let's take the straight white guy and make him, you know, like we'll give him all these flaws and we'll make him stupid but also kind of, you know, like nefarious or whatever. But because they're so focused on making him look like the bad guy, they give him more depth. So he ends up being more interesting. They did.
So I guess
They did that with Black Panther too. Like the you know the most heroic character in the movie was the white CIA guy that they were shitting on the entire time because he was white. But he ended up being like the biggest hero that took the most risks and saved everybody. So it's like
that's what happens when you make your character, you know, less than a perfect angel that can do no wrong.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to say, Brian, is support Ken's rights.
Right. Well, you know, there were articles saying that this movie is like a dunk on men's rights and stuff, but I want to make the case for why I think that it is foolish to claim that this movie is accidentally based or secretly based. I think the reason that I think this is a bad idea is that Greta Gerwig is not at all sympathetic to men. She hates men. It's clear from the film. She has her like a character do this speech about how women can never do anything right and everything, like because men are all, even though they're amazing, but they're also really oppressed and men are always in the way and all that. I mean, she is filling this with misandry. It's the most misandrous movie I've ever heard of. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I've heard, it is the worst about that. But because it still had to be a film, she had, you know, like it couldn't just be a fucking slam poem like it usually is. She had to actually construct characters. And so, you know, people who, let's say, would ignore or otherwise sort of like, you know, break down like what's actually happening. Like there's a point where, again, this is as somebody who hasn't seen it, Ken wants like Barbie's attention because all of the Kens in Barbie land, they don't have a job, they don't have a home, and yet it's a utopia for the women. Like there's a female president and everything. Like this is basically Greta Gerwig telling you what kind of world she wants. That's why it's so like gross. I mean, sure, it's fictional, whatever, but
well, it's all basically like a reflection in the mirror. Like they even say at the end of the movie, like, you know, well, we've deposed the Kens and they're no longer in charge, and but maybe one day we'll give them like basic Barbie rights. You know, all the rights they enjoy. You know, kind of like women in the real world. Wink, wink. Maybe one day we'll get our rights, women.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, it obviously isn't logically consistent. Like, obviously this woman is trying to make something fit that doesn't because her ideology makes no sense. But it doesn't matter because she is a cultist and a true believer. But that's not really the problem. Like, you know, I saw and I know people mention the Lotus Eaters. I saw the Lotus Eater thing and they were trying to make the case that actually if you, like, look at it this way, blah, 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 it's actually secretly based. No, don't do that. Because all you're doing is sucking your own cock, saying, we're smart, we figured out that this is actually the opposite of what they think it is. When the normie women and their daughters are going to the movie and they're not taking that away from it. They're walking away going, yeah, men do suck. Patriarchy's bad. You know what? I'm going to divorce my husband. I mean, I know that's extreme, but I'm saying it just feeds into the resentment that feminists feed into women 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they go, even though they don't know what's going to happen because the marketing team lied to them and it manipulated them and it told them, this is for you. We promise. Look at that. Look at how funny this is. Do you remember the Very Brady movie? Remember that movie? The Very Brady movie? That movie was making fun of the Brady Bunch. It didn't make fun of patriarchy. It didn't throw any political shit in there. It looked at the show. It found the stuff that people loved about it. And it put all of it together and just enhanced the silliness and put the Brady Bunch as they are, as characters in the real world of the time. And that was the fun, right? Nothing gendered about it, right? But this is not that, but it makes you think it is. So it's going to be like a fish out of water thing, right? Barbie's going to go to the real world, find out how complex it is, and you know, and that's going to be the movie. But it's not. It is not at all that, okay? So there, and sure, you could make the case. You could make the case that, you know, the world that Ken was trying to make with his patriarchy seemed better than the world that it was before, because even the Barbies that were there were happy, but then they have to tell you, well, actually, they're not happy. They're just brainwashed into thinking that they're happy, kind of like the real world, right, ladies? Right? And so my problem with this is, if you think that this movie is secretly based or accidentally based because, you know,
I'd say there's a little bit of difference there. Secretly, accidentally. Accidentally, well, yeah, maybe. Secretly, no.
Yeah, accidentally, maybe. But what I'm saying is that's like Mr. 0303 said, it's just cope. So the thing is that this has to be rejected full stop. Like, I mean, make the memes if you want to, but don't support the film. Don't do that, because the problem is that when you are a red-pilled person, you start to think that everyone else should be what you are, thinking the way that you are. And you assume that they will. So if you're like, well, I have analyzed this film and I have figured out that it's actually this, and then you're gonna just put it out there and no one's gonna get it, because the very, let's say, uneducated, low information, normie people that are gonna go see it, they're gonna take away exactly what Greta wants them to. So it doesn't matter. You see what I'm saying? Like the only person that's gonna gratify is you, because like no one else is gonna see it that way. You'd have to make the case strongly for other people. I don't think it's worth it. So it's gonna make money the first weekend because the marketing team lied. All we can do is hope that people will tell other people, dude, don't see this movie, like it's bad. Because it's not just bad because of the feminism. It's not just bad because of the political shit. It's not just bad because of those things. It's just a bad movie. Like, it's not even well made. You know, every scene is a little bit too long. The jokes don't land. The stuff that could have been fun, that could have actually like played around with the brand that they were trying to display, there's not enough of it, you know, and it's just not a good film. It made a lot of money because it lied to people. Hopefully people will figure that out, because, you know, who knows, right? That's why when they say this is for people who love Barbie and people who hate Barbie, it's really for people who hate Barbie. And another thing about this too is that when the Barbie doll was invented, it was a feminist doll at the time. Like, they tell you that in the beginning, that like dolls were, up until that point, supposedly, just baby dolls for little girls, right? So that they can simulate being mothers. And in the beginning of the movie, the girls are trashing their baby dolls because they don't want to be mothers anymore. It's like, you know, anti-natalist from the beginning. And the Barbie doll shows up as the alternative because now there's a doll of a woman who can do anything except be a mother. I mean, except they made a pregnant one, but like, I guess nobody buys it anymore or something, or they took it out of circulation. So it was just career woman Barbie does it all, right? She's got everything. I used to work in a toy store, and we had a Barbie section, and it was like, you know, pink, the whole thing. Mattel basically had a section of the store to themselves, and that's where they put everything. And there were collectors that would come there to buy them. And most of the people who bought Barbie dolls, by the way, were adults. I mean, adult women, right? So it was a feminist brand from the beginning, but the thing is, when it was made, and it was a woman, by the way, who ran the company, which is another thing that doesn't make sense, because in the movie they have like the CEO and the board of directors of Mattel, and they're all men because patriarchy. But the reality is, like, half of the fucking, the half of the board members are women, like 5 out of the 11 or whatever, and the actual like CEO of Mattel was a woman until like recently because she died. So, I mean, it's based in lies. I mean, I don't see why Mattel isn't upset. I mean, some people say, well, any press is good press, but they're kind of shitting on the whole company in this movie. I don't know if they knew that, but they are. They're making him out to be, stupid, run by idiots, because there are no decent men in this film at all. I mean, it's a non-stop feminist fever dream from start to finish, and there's a little bit of branding in it, and that's it. And so, honestly, if you want the Barbie brand, then go buy one. But I mean, at this point, I don't know why anyone would want to give Mattel any money at all. So, and I just think that the accidentally or secretly based thing, I wouldn't even bother with it. I mean, it is absolutely hateful tripe to me. And this is an example, by the way, of the reverse of this nullification, because the media tells you what you're supposed to like. They reinforce it over and over, and then when you go watch their movies, they reinforce it again, and so you start thinking, well, this must be what everybody likes. This must be acceptable behavior. This must be the way we're supposed to view men and women. This is how we're supposed to view these things, right? And that's what they're doing. So the fact that it's using a child's toy promote the brand is actually making it more insidious, because they're not interested in the brand. Like, Greta Gerwig hates this doll. She hates it. I mean, I don't know why Mattel gave her the job, but they probably didn't know. They probably didn't know, because the marketing team didn't know. And I think that it's important for people to recognize that is happening. Like, they don't care. This is like, why is Disney selling a third of their company? Because they hired a bunch of people that want to essentially eat the whole thing from the inside out, tear it all down, and then take it over. And that's what's happening. Marvel's dead, Star Wars is dead, all their brands are dead, Doctor Who is dead. I mean, this Barbie thing didn't even get off the ground. We'll see how it does. I'm sorry for hijacking this too much, but we'll see how it does. I hope that the second weekend, it will be like there'll be a massive fall off, because people were essentially lied to about what the movie was about. And especially if you brought like a little girl to it, because it looks like something you should have been able to do that with. It looks innocent. It's not. I mean, it's just not. It's like, it's feminists doing what they're always doing. They're being disgusting and hateful, and, they're crude and all of that. So, I guess we'll see. But those are just my thoughts on that.
I'm not super hopeful, unfortunately. I think this one's going to have legs because of just word of mouth alone.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing was really good.
Everything except for maybe 5 movies this year just absolutely all suck.
I mean, they are kind of exaggerating their profit numbers a bit too, because they're trying to like make it sound like a bigger hit, and that's part of the marketing too, right?
I mean, I don't know how they can do that.
Well, no, I mean, they're making it sound like a lot, like, it did a historic 100. Well, they're saying it did a historic $155 million.
The only thing I think they're maybe, doing a little bit deceitfully is they're saying the biggest opening ever, and then in very tiny words, of a female director. Which, again, is not technically a lie, but... No, but I mean, that's the marketing. I'm saying it's the marketing doing its thing. Mike, what were you going to say?
Well, this is Lauren. Hi, guys.
Oh, hey, Lauren.
So I just wanted to chime in and say, imagine being a father, bringing your daughter to this movie, and having to explain the world to her afterwards.
Yeah.
She's not ever going to listen to you. If she's impressionable enough, and let's face it, what young women are not, or what young female children are not.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, why would you do that to yourself? And it's just so wrong and upside down. And we haven't seen the movie yet, so I will put that caveat in there. Reserve
judgment, right?
Exactly. But this just all seems like, the same old feminist dribble just repackaged and shoved down the throats of our young children, and we have to deal with the repercussions of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's that's exactly the most important point, right? Is that if you bring your child to this and you don't know what's in this, now they have that in their head. Now they're gonna look at everything in a different way, unless it just goes over their head. They're too little. But even then, it's like this. You should be really upset by this deceitful, marketing that like got you thinking that this is gonna. I mean, this is like what they have to do. Like this is what they have to do. And how is this not its own kind of grooming? I don't know. I mean,
exactly.
So I think that like ultimately, well, my primary point is that I don't think this is something that you could claim is actually based. I mean, you can certainly I support the Kendom, and I believe in Ken's rights and all that, but
the Ken ethno state.
Yeah, the Ken ethno state. Yeah, I'm all about that. I think it's funny. But I don't think we should support the film at all. Like I think it is really, really hateful, and it just it's disguised as something pleasant. Kind of like how our entire feminine culture is. There's a lot of hostility, and it's disguised as niceness. So, what was that? Remember that villain on Harry Potter? I can't remember the name of the character.
Voldemort?
No. The one that was more evil than Voldemort. The woman in pink.
I've never.
I know somebody in the chat knows who I'm talking about. I know they're gonna name it. But yeah, that's exactly what this is. It's
Harry Potter.
There's a Harry Potter villain with that was like very feminine. She wore like pink.
Pink.
Yeah.
Dolores Umbridge.
Yes, Dolores Umbridge. Yes. That one. That is the evil woman. Okay, but anyway. Let me see if there's anything more I wanted to add to this. Hollywood movie critics are widely praising Barbie as the most unwavering feminist summer blockbuster ever to exist. So it is a success, but again, I think that's because of the deceit. I don't think a feminist film would normally have been a success. Although, I would argue that most films that feature female stars are indeed feminist films in most cases. So, anyway, giving the new film particular adoration for its messaging around the patriarchy. I understand that there's a drinking game that if you take a drink every time patriarchy is mentioned, you will die. And that Ken actually gets a book called Patriarchy, which he gets from men in the real world because, we're all walking around with that. And then he takes it back to Barbie Land and uses it to dominate Barbie Land. And the women like it there because they're brainwashed. Do you see how nonsensical this is? This is what feminists believe, I think. This is what they believe. Barbie is both a master's thesis on feminism and Austin Powers-esque romp, which it's not. Austin Powers is funny.
I think we can relabel this the 50 Shades of Pink.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Pink. The film is... The writers can't tell a story based on a lie about men and women. That's why it doesn't work. That's why you can make the case that it's... or some people have tried to make the case. But no, don't support it. Let them have this trash heap. We'll see how the numbers are next week. It will be revealing to see how many, let's say, normies agree with the message. That would be the thing I would take from it, right? So we'll see. Thank you for the super childs. I'm gonna read those out really quick. We got a lot this time too. Thanks, guys. This is great. Ergo Proxy gives us $50. Thank you, Ergo Proxy. I gotta find something to play there.
Mr. thought it was White Boy Day.
And says, according to Barnes from Viva and Barnes, people could reasonably sue the Barbie movie for false advertising. It's sold as a bring your children movie, and it is for feminist middle-aged women, and ends with Barbie going to the gynecologist. Yes, because she becomes a real girl, and therefore she has a vagina, because before she doesn't have a vagina, and Ken doesn't have a penis either, which, by the way, might be kind of like a queer theory thing that's being thrown in there. I don't know for sure.
Did you know? Oh, hold up. You might be onto something there. Did you know who plays Dr. Barbie in the movie?
The trans Barbie does.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a trans Barbie, yeah.
Tell me they weren't saying something.
I know. I mean, like, look, there are no accidents. Like, there are no accidents. This is not something where, oh, we just happen to cast the best person for the job. No, like, all of it is carefully thought out. About as careful as feminists can think, anyway. So yeah, there are no accidents. You can't be dismissive of that. And you know, like, all of there's like a lot of like stuff where the Kens like they get into, I guess, you know, competition with each other, and it turns homo erotic right away. Like, I mean, because that's what Greta Gerwig thinks of men, that we're just gay for each other all the time, and we're just too scared to just share it. You know, it's like those. Oh, remember all those articles that the Guardian and Slate used to print or release, where it'd be like, guys, you should just blow your friend once in a while. What's wrong with a blowjob between friends? What's wrong with a little bit of butt sex? I mean, you're waiting for your food to cool off after you just took it out of the oven anyway. I mean,
mate.
Yeah, mate. I mean, really. So yeah, not surprising.
Another fun thing, if you didn't hear it from, I think this was from Hello magazine. This was Greta Gerwig talking about the scene where they're first in the real world, Ken and Barbie, and they're skating down Venice Beach.
Yeah.
And the two different reactions were hilarious, because they did this live thinking they were going to be able to use this for their movie, and they weren't able to. All the dudes immediately went up to Ryan Gosling, was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, Ken, fuck yeah, Ryan Gosling, high five, what's up, you look great, dude."
Mm-hmm.
Nobody approached Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Nobody said a thing to Margot Robbie. Nobody looked at Margot Robbie. And they had to shoot that with extras, like leering and staring at her, because no one was actually doing it.
Yeah, because they don't want to lose their fucking job. Because they don't want to get their ass kicked by some other dude that's watching. Or maybe they're all gay. It's possible. It is California. But I think, no, I heard that too. I mean, it makes sense. It's not like it's in men's nature to do it. But then, you know, you make like the climate so fucking hostile. What do you expect? You know, men don't want to talk to women. All right. Well, anyway, thank you for that, Meredith G, with a big donation and a big comment. Gives us $10. It says, HBR News number 415. I've listened to both sides of the debate regarding Barbie, EVS, Script Doctor, Lorena Creole, Midnight's Edge. I haven't watched all those. I haven't watched any of those, actually. Movie spoiler alert. I can't get behind the idea that Barbie is based simply because Barbie apologizes to Ken, or that the Barbie's creator has that line that the patriarchy is made up excuse for failure before Barbie chooses to be a real woman. If it's based, it's an accident, because the utopian world for women is one that could only come from the imagination of an 8-year-old girl playing with her dolls. Inadvertently showing us feminist is juvenile doesn't make it based. The abortion metaphor, the anti-mother message, and the woman doesn't need a man because she rejects Ken tells a different story. Absolutely. All of those things are true. All of those things. Anti-motherhood, anti-family, anti-male. You know, the life was perfect when men were basically homeless slaves. So, go ahead.
I don't often start sentences like this, because it's almost always an indulgence in identity politics. But here goes. As a ... as a... Oh wait, I'm reading out the thing for the third story.
Oh, what? Oh,
No.
Not yet. Oh, I see. Wait, are you doing the Jason Aldean thing? Because we're not on that yet.
I am doing the Jason Aldean.
Oh, okay. All right. Hold on.
That's a good chance to segue. That's a good chance to segue.
Well, it is.
We're still only on the second story. Let's do the third story. Sorry, let's do it. Let's do it now.
Run. Let's go.
Well, wait. I got super chows though. I gotta finish them. I got two, and I got rumble rants too. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Let me just get the last. I gotta read these. So another super chow from Plain Dane for $5. Thank you, Plain Dane. Here you go. And he says Barbie made a lot because of nostalgia and its long popular history. Who hasn't heard of Barbie? It's a global franchise. It's probably the most popular toy ever. Yeah, of course it is. That's why they do it. Are you guys getting it yet? Look, these people always operate top down. It's either authority or it's popularity, and they use it. It's to them, it's a tool. That's it. Barbie is a tool to push feminism. I mean, Barbie was feminist when it was created, but by today's standards, it's not feminist at all. It's actually fascist. They literally say that in the movie, that Barbie's fascist. So there you go.
Sure, why not? That word is lost.
I mean, why not?
Meaning.
Yeah, why not? I'm saying, like, that's the truth. The goalposts are constantly moving because the revolution has to be endless. You have to constantly find something new to rebel against and revolutionize against and problematize. That is part of the dialectic. It's endless because that's on purpose, right? There's no satisfying these people because that's not the point. You have to keep fighting them. All right. Anyway, that's all the super chows. Now, go ahead, Mike. Do you want to say something? Somebody?
Speaking of Jason Aldean.
Oh, are we doing that now? Wait, I got... Okay, I'll... Guys, in the Rumble chat, I will read your stuff next, but we might as well get into the Jason Aldean thing. So, because I know Mike wants to say something to that. So, Jason Aldean, Under Fire, for a song. Following its release as the newest single from Jason Aldean in May, Try That in a Small Town faced a wave of criticism upon the unveiling of its music video on July 14th. While the song's theme revolves around the familiar country music motif of small towns and firearms, which are fairly, pickup trucks and the barbecues and whatever else country people sing about, right? Normal. Some individuals argue that it carries threatening undertones with racial implications. The controversy escalated further when viewers recognized that the video had been filmed in front of the Maury County Courthouse situated in Columbia, Tennessee. And I got... Jason Aldean did make a tweet, and I know this isn't exactly new, but I thought I would read it for you guys. I have it here on the screen. Sorry, JoJo is blocking part of it. Jason Aldean says, in the past 24 hours, I have been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song, a song that has been out since May, and was subject to the comparison that I, direct quote, was not too pleased with the nationwide BLM protests. These references are not only meritless, but dangerous. There is not a single lyric in the song that references race or points to it. And there isn't a single video clip that isn't real news footage. And while I can try and respect others to have their own interpretation of a song with music, this one goes too far. As so many pointed out, I was present at Route 91, where so many lost their lives, and our community recently suffered another heartbreaking tragedy. No one, including me, wants to continue to see senseless headlines or families ripped apart. Try That in a Small Town for me refers to the feeling of community that I had growing up, where we took care of our neighbors regardless of differences of background or belief, because they were our neighbors, and that was above any differences. My political views have never been something I've hidden from, and I know that a lot of us in this country don't agree on how we get back to a sense of normalcy, where we go at least a day without a headline that keeps us up at night, but the desire for it to, that's what this song is about. And I just want to point out also, just like the Barbie thing, I wasn't going to cover this. I was like on the fence about it because it's not exactly a men's rights thing. I think the first one is because a man committed suicide, and we know that suicide is a big problem that men face, but there is something else that's sort of like outside of that links all three of these stories together, which I'm going to get into. That's why I ended up choosing it. But Mike, I know that you're champing at the bit.
I found a connection. Champing or chomping is either way. I'm a horse. I'm a horse here going, the fuck is all this bullshit? And I'm like, yeah, I don't often start sentences like I'm about to start. Because it's almost always an indulgence in identity politics. But here goes. As a musician, I am endlessly frustrated by the absence of suitable role models in the music industry who exist anywhere to the right of Stalin on the political spectrum. While the Western world is getting ravaged by globalist, anti-nationalist, communist propaganda in one ear and out the other, I'm sitting here with Satan's cock in my mouth, wondering, waiting when some other popular musician or other is going to come out and say something in opposition to the establishment agenda. And who do I get?
A country singer.
I get Morrissey. I get Morrissey.
Yeah.
an absolute wanker. I get Johnny Rotten, an absolute wanker. I get Liam Gallagher, an absolute wanker. I get Billy Corgan, and okay, fine, a lot of you like him. In my opinion, he's remarkably up himself for a singer who makes a noise like a crying baby. And I wish he would employ an actual singer rather than just replacing everyone else in his band except the singer who sounds like a crying baby. But whatever, I guess it's this weird rule of life. It's a kind of syllogism. The people who piss you off are the people who don't give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who don't give a fuck are the people most likely to speak out against the prevailing narrative. And so we come to the phenomenon that is country music. I don't like country music, and I don't know anyone who does. It's a genre that hasn't evolved pretty much whatsoever.
Are we talking modern pop country, or are we talking like Johnny Cash?
Johnny Cash is technically gospel, but yeah, often lumped in with country.
Okay, Waylon Jennings, Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson.
Yeah, you have to go deep into either old school shit or fucking stoner shit.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much whatsoever, it's a genre for the most part that hasn't evolved for 100 years, other than the inclusion of the occasional electric instrument here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it appears to be the only genre to be breaking the ice with regards to this quote-unquote woke bullshit. And they're doing it in terms of lyrical content. Country musicians, much like blues musicians, have this way of actually saying what they mean. Like, I woke up this morning and New York City was getting razed to the ground by mobs of drag queens and so on. I woke up this morning and New York City was getting razed to the ground. That sort of thing. That seems to be the difference. Rock musicians don't do this. They don't simply say what they really mean. They have this way of burying their messages underneath this foggy layer of poetic allegory. And they're easily able to do it because they're all on drugs. Shitloads of drugs. They can write about shit and pretend they're not writing about that shit. It's easy when you're on drugs. Anything can count as anything because we know the joke and they don't know the joke. Lol. So they can indeed make fun of communists in their lyrics as long as they make it ambiguous. But they can make fun of patriots of any given country, but especially their own, quite explicitly. Ambiguity be damned, and they will never get in trouble with the record companies who have long since been taken over by the aforementioned communists. It all makes sense. Most musicians are misguided degenerates who think they're going to make it big when they obviously never will. And so they demand communism be exacted everywhere to make sure that they get just as much radio play as anyone else. And so, yeah, the moral of the story is, you know your favorite musicians, yeah? They're probably cunts.
Yep. I like the Red. I just want to say I'm a big fan of a lot of bands, but I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I want to punch Flea in the mouth.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
Oh, most musicians, most musicians are just like most movie stars.
Yep.
They're absolute leftist pieces of garbage.
Yeah.
If they're able to make it into that position of authority, they're probably cunts.
Except for Rush, those guys are based.
Yeah, and the musicians you don't like, they're probably the ones who are not cunts. Yeah. Consider this if you will, and try not to consider this when you're listening to your favorite bands. They are probably cunts who hate you for being even slightly conservative. The rule of thumb is never meet your heroes, but when it comes to bands, don't even listen to them talk.
Mm-hmm.
They will inevitably disappoint you. Just listen to whatever music or whatever lyrics will leave you suspended in this layer of I don't know. Art in general should leave you in the realm of I don't know. Otherwise, it's not even art, it's propaganda. Art does not give answers, it can only ask questions.
Yes.
Message ends.
Yes, that's good.
Do as you will.
Here's a weird question. Country music, is that unique to America? Like, is there a equivalent of because country music came out of the country in the West here in the United States, but like, does the Britain have country music, or is it like?
I think it's called folk.
Is it like minstrel music? Like
no, it's just called folk.
But we have folk music too.
Yeah, but in the US it developed from folk to country and then to rock and roll, and then rock and roll and blues developed into this thing we call rock, and then eventually metal, I guess.
Yeah.
But folk has been much the same for every culture that developed from. I guess the Anglos and the Celts. This idea of folk music being just people who have wooden instruments going bing 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 bing.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we haven't.
Through a forest with a mandolin.
Yeah, it's something Europe
Bar
and
music.
America has in common.
You guys remember
until the fucking Marxists took it over and went no. This has to be anti-racist in all its facets. And so on.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the music in the original Diablo that would play whenever you were in town? It was like guitar.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's what I think English country music sounds like.
Skyrim core.
So Jason Aldean. I didn't know a whole lot about the story. But like as time went on, I saw a lot of these wild allegations against him for making this song. And look, I grew up in Chicago. I've heard rap music that is literally a confession of murder. Like it's in the lyrics. Dude. You can like track.
There was this big song by YG in like 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Where it systematically goes about how to rob Asian people.
Yeah.
It's like first you need like 3 dudes, then you need to get a getaway driver. Make sure you ring the doorbell once. That gets them to open the door. Don't mess with items like phones or laptops because those are traced. Go after jewelry and cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
so
it's like, but that's a perfectly we're cool with that.
I remember there was a song where a guy talked about who he killed, where he did it, what the weapon he used was, and it was in the rap, and the police used it to track the guy down. Like they used it to arrest. I don't remember the name of the guy, but maybe someone in the chat does. And it's not the only time. There's lots of rap music where it's basically
just the instructions of making methamphetamine or crack cocaine.
Yeah. And I bring this up not because I want to do like a tit for tat, but to make a point that most of us know that this happens, right? I mean, these songs don't even rhyme. Most of us know that this happens, but we just kind of go, well, like we just kind of shrug and hope that that's not actually like a real crime and it's just music. So because most of us believe in freedom of expression. But when this guy makes this song, and there's just like he said, and I think we all know this, he wasn't pointing the finger at any particular group. He was talking about,
not only do the lyrics not feature black people or the ghetto or the hood or anything like that, the music video doesn't even show a single black person.
No, it's all protesters and riots
and actual police footage.
Antifa and it's stuff like that. So none of that's there, but the wokies are trying to imply that is racist. Now, a lot of people have said, well, if you think that, if you believe that anything that is anti-crime must be anti-black, then maybe you're the racist, herp-a-derp-a-derp. But we know that these people don't care about this, and this is why I have to drive this home. It's not actually about that at all. It's about scaring people who are not racist into thinking that they are racist, just like feminist allegations of misogyny are not based in actual evidence of misogyny, of which there is very little, if any at all, but in fact it's just to get people who respond emotionally to accusations of misogyny to respond and apologize and fall to their knees and all of that. That's what it's about. It is psychological torture. And I want to talk a little bit about political nullification, because you have Jason Aldean, who handles this well. I think that he was still a little bit mealy-mouthed in his, explanation. I wouldn't have provided one. I would have said, fuck you, this is my life, I'll do what I want. But I get it. He's trying to, he looks like a Christian man. I see he's wearing a cross. So maybe that's why he was approaching this with a little bit more, let's say, kindness. He's probably never really experienced it firsthand. And he was like, well, I should probably, put out some kind of statement. But he didn't back down. He did not back down. So don't do that, right? And the guy, the Toronto guy, he did. And what did it get him? More trouble, because once they smell blood in the water, you're done. Like they don't provide. There's no such thing as a redemption arc. There's no such thing. So this is political. Now how do they do it? So that's why I want to get into what political nullification is. So they create nullified categories of people. We'll take one that we know very well: men. So why is it when there are all of these like PTA meetings and city council meetings about schools and about education and all that, and the majority of people, not all, but the majority of people that go there are mothers, the mama bears come out, and they're the ones that are doing this? Well, because even if there are fathers in the picture, they're men, and so if they show up, it actually does the whole thing a disservice, right? And we've all sort of been born into this, because this has been going on. This nullification thing has been going on since before we came into this world. So now we're coming into a place that's already nullified men as a group when it comes to speaking on basically anything, but especially speaking on women's issues or women in general. Because they've been made into a class. And how does that actually work in the world? Well, basically they say so-and-so as a man did this. Doesn't matter after that. Once the normies hear man, they already put them into a subconscious category beneath woman, and I know that we're kind of inclined for that anyway, but there is like extra pressure coming from this nullification process. Other examples of this are white and cis, which is a word you should never use, because it's part of their lexicon, it's part of their language. You shouldn't use cis to address, normal people that are not trans, and heteronormative and whatnot, right? So one of the reasons why this is so effective on men, which I think is probably where it started, possibly, is because the ideology itself is feminine. It is female. So when men speak up, it is coded as patriarchy. And this is not something that only happens with feminists. This is another thing that people have to understand. The normal blue-pilled person that is not political, that is just trying to go through their day, they believe in patriarchy. They may not call it that, but they believe it. They believe that men have ruled over women throughout most of history by default. It's not their fault. It's the way they were raised. It's the way they were educated. It's the way that our whole world is set up, right? It's literally the thing that feminists claim men are doing is happening to everybody else. And so because of that, the ideology itself is coded female. Therefore, when men speak up, it's coded as patriarchy. Men as a class are nullified. These are things like the reason why they can say, oh, masculinity is toxic, because, and they use that language to poison society against men, or at least treat them as less deserving of sympathy, right? And they what they do is they connect other things to this. So when, like, for example, they will code things, male or heteronormative or MAGA, conservative, right-wing, anti-vax, boomer, libertarian, QAnon, Christian, MRA,
these are all just
incel.
thought terminating cliches.
Yeah, but they're categories, and they throw people
toss
in them.
one of these out here, and
Yeah.
it's just like, oh well, conversation's over.
Yeah, and
you
you
just outed this person as an insert here, istophobe member of this group.
Yeah, and what you have to do is you have to significantly demonize that particular category. So when the Elliot Rodgers shooting happened, we heard nothing but about incels as dangerous murderers, right? For in all of the media for like a year or more. And I think we still hear about it every so often now. Why? Not because Elliot Rodgers was like the king of the incels. It's because it's useful. Now they can just call anybody an incel, and it has an immediate emotional reaction in people if they're paying attention to the mainstream news, and that name, that word has like passed their lips. The same thing is for MAGA. If you say MAGA around normies, you're gonna get people freaking out, even though it's a very straightforward statement. But they've associated so much poison with it that now it just means this bad thing. And so I think that this has been going on for a very long time. This is why, and I was talking to Lindsay about this. First of all, I don't blame blue pill people for believing blue pill things, because that's what most people believe. So when like a blue pill conservative person has something to say about men or feminism, and they do the whole well, the second wave, oh well, the vote, well, the suffragettes, etc. I mean, I get it. Like, I get it, because this is what like this is why like everyone is moving in that direction, because the society is being engineered in that direction. This is why it's so hard for us to get people to look at the men's rights arguments, because we're so far outside of that nullified category that people are going to be repulsed if you say, well, look, I care about men. And you have to be very careful, because you might like drive people away because they've been brainwashed. I mean, I don't like to say that because it sounds, but they've been conditioned through education, through entertainment, through the media, through the news, through the internet, through everything, to basically believe certain things. So when you hear the word Trump, you're supposed to have a reaction, because they've associated his name with a bunch of negative shit. But that's only because they've already associated things like being a Christian, being a conservative, or being right-wing with negative shit. That's why the left believes, and normies believe that being right-wing means being evil. Because that's what they've done. I don't want to hear the arguments. I don't care about small government. I don't care about being fiscally conservative. Whatever it is, that's all out the window, because right-wing means evil. Thanks Jon Stewart, because that's what he did for his whole career, right? They made it fashionable to hate people that are on the right, that are Christian, that are male, that are straight, etc. And they just keep adding to that category. And now they're getting to the point where they can just add people to it, regardless of those people's beliefs. So, for example, Trump, I already mentioned. Andrew Tate, I don't care how you feel about him. The point is, he's being used in this way. It's all about like, oh, he is a red pillar, he is manosphere, he is men's rights activist, incel, whatever. The point is that all of those categories fit under the nullified category, and they only do that once people on the right, or people that are not on the left or whatever, start to embrace them. So as an example, Young Mi Park, I showed a clip of her last week. She is a refugee, I guess you could say, or she fled North Korea, went through an actual hellish life, and made it into the United States. And the mainstream media did not cover her. They didn't interview her. They had nothing to do with her. And instead, they just waited. They waited until conservative media, Turning Point USA, whoever it was, it doesn't matter, whoever it was, they said, well, we'll have you on, right? We'll talk to you. I think Joe Rogan had her on, right? And once they did, then they were like, oh, look, Young Mi Park, she supposedly fled North Korea, but she's a conservative. And I know this because she was on Jordan Peterson's stream, and he interviewed her. She was on Joe Rogan. She was on this or that, but it's because nobody else would give her a platform. So once what they call the right, or the bad guys, give someone a platform, then that person becomes associated with that group, and that's how they nullify them. Because what their goal is to get normal people not to hear them out, not to seek out whatever it is they have to say. So it's like a lose-lose situation, right? So you either don't appear anywhere because you're waiting for the mainstream media to come and get you, which they will never do, or you go on right-wing media because they're the only ones willing to hear you out, and then they get to call you right-wing. I give you an example that's closer to home. Karen. People have been asking me, what's Karen been doing? She doesn't come on the show that often anymore, right? Karen, nowadays, she comes on maybe a couple of times a month at the end of the month to help us with the fundraiser. What does she do aside from that? Well, obviously, she takes care of her family, but as far as like work or whatever, you know, in her sort of field, she goes on interviews, she goes on podcasts, she goes on AM radio. Well, who does she talk to? Well, the only people that will talk to her. Who are those people? Conservatives. So they're the ones willing to hear her out. And so that's the only one. So what happens next? Well, if the liberal media or the mainstream media gets wind of the fact that Karen's been there, they're just going to associate her with them. And then she gets put into the nullified category. Do you see how that works? That's what they're doing. This is why I get a little bent out of shape when people shit on conservatives, because I think, well, first of all, they're just blue pill people at worst. You know, and secondly, they're the only ones that'll talk to us. So I don't know what you want me to do. Like, do we want our message to get out there or not? Because if we don't do anything, like we don't talk to you because we don't want to be associated with you. Well, now you're playing their game. That's what they're doing. They've been doing this since before we were born. This is the norm. This is what I'm trying to explain, right? So anyway, let me finish what I wanted to say about that. So that's what they do, and you'll notice that every time something comes up, they do this. They throw them in a category. What happened when Sound of Freedom came up? Oh, it's a QAnon conspiracy theory. Jim Caviezel's crazy. Did you hear he's Christian? They've already thrown Christians into that category. They've thrown QAnon into that category. They don't even know what it is. I don't know what it is. I mean, I think it's a lot of things. I don't give a shit. It's just like Trump said. I don't know what they're about, but I know they don't like pedophiles. It's good enough for me, you know? Then, what is it? For Karens, they have this thing called Planned Karenhood. So it's a play on Planned Parenthood. And what is it? Well, it's basically just a way to attack white women. This is why I don't attack white women as a group. I never do, because I think that it's just playing their game. It's their rules, right? Don't play by their rules. Even if it feels good, even if you think it's precise, I don't do it. And they do this with incels. I already mentioned that. Everyone is under this spell. It's a spell, essentially. They're using words to control behavior. I already mentioned that Jon Stewart did this, and this goes back to Mao. So, like, Chairman Mao had, when he was like taking over after his Cultural Revolution in China, he created 5 identity categories that he called black categories. They were basically like, you know, you're not supposed to have any association with these categories. One of them was what he called rightists, which are right-wingers. And this is why I make that distinction about right-wing people being like more in line with the reduction of the influence and size of government. This is why the left hates it. This is why I got banned off of Twitter. And I have yet to get back on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now, because I pissed off the commies. Speaking will nullify you because they will associate you with like black categories, but not speaking will give them what they want. And the hard thing is it's designed to make normies think that the person being nullified is not just to be ignored, but to be actively opposed. So if you speak up, then they will cast you in a black category, and then the normies will see you as an enemy or an opponent because they've been conditioned to do that, because the media and all of these intellectuals and shit are engineered against you, right? I think Alex Jones is another example of somebody who was put into a black category. But how do you fight against this? So I think the only thing we can do is we have to tell the truth no matter what. We have to not apologize under any circumstances, unless, of course, we find that we're wrong about something. And even then, it's better to call it issuing a correction than making an apology, because you don't owe anyone an apology for saying what you believe to be true. And we also have to make sure that people know that this is happening, and your opponents should know that they're doing this to you, and that you know that they're doing this to you, right? So you name the dynamic, and you let them know that you're trying to engage in forcing me to apologize for something that I know is not wrong, and I know that you're doing that to control my behavior, and you're not going to do that. And again, it's important to note that struggle sessions are in fact a form of psychological torture, and that's what they're doing. And Jason Aldean deserves all the credit for not, like, because what he did was completely reasonable and nothing to apologize for at all, and that these people don't actually want him to not be racist. They just want him to go away. And if he ends up, like, if they drove him to suicide, they wouldn't care. Because that's kind of like, it's either you do what they say or you die, and that's where it's at right now. And that's the way they are. So, sorry for going long. I just had to explain that because I think that's the main takeaway. You can see this in all three of the stories we've covered. We have one man that unfortunately wasn't able to fight back. We have the Barbie movie, which does the same thing in reverse, where you go to the movie and you're thinking you're gonna get like a fun ride, and you get this feminist shit, and then you go and you're like, well, what did everybody else say? And all of the critics are gushing, and all your friends are wearing pink, and it's like there's all this media shit and all this marketing. You're like, well, I guess it wasn't bad. And that's the opposite, right? They're creating like positive categories. You should be associated with this. You should, divorce your husband. You should not have kids, whatever. And people who don't have kids are less invested in the future, so they're more likely to do as they're told. So, because they don't care about their kids. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Sorry for the long rant. I just wanted to get that off my chest. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything to it. I know I went long, but
I concur with all of the things.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. So, let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. I got some super chows to read out, and I will talk about the last story briefly, which I thought it's good news. It's wholesome. Plain Dane gives us $5 and says Barbie made a lot because of this. Oh, I already read that one. Anonymous gives us $5 and says, Mike, don't forget Roger Waters. He's the only musician that I'm aware of that calls out the crimes and human rights violations of apartheid Zionist Israel, and he's actually against the military-industrial complex. Country music is unique to the U.S. I mean, yeah, I thought so, but I like the idea of, minstrel bard music. Bring back bard music. Bring that back. I want that to come back. They probably have it someplace. The music industry won't promote it though. Anyway, thanks for this. I only
want to hear music from you if you also know how to use a short sword.
Yeah, or a rapier. So that's it for the Rumble, the Super Chows. Thank you. Now I'm going to read the Rumble rants because those also take priority. NobaFan21 gives us $1. Thank you, NobaFan. And says, I've sailed the 7 seas to see the Barbie movie. It tries to play both sides of feminist talking points and patriarchy theory by having Barbie land be perfect while also reflecting our real world. Well, to put it simply, I think that they're just trying to make a round peg fit into a square hole, and they're not really thinking it through. They're hoping that, they think that their audience, they think that the audience is stupid and won't get it, and they'll just drink whatever they put in front of them. And then Oiknooi, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, gives us $1 and says, choo choo, bro job, haha. Okay. Based, I guess. And I don't have the last story on screen, but I'll just read it out. It's okay. And then I got 2 super chats. So Cyberzerk gives us $50 in, I think they're Coronas, and says, I introduced my children to the horror film genre with Wallace and Gromit and The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. That's a good movie. I like that studio. What do they call? Aardman? Albatross gives us 10 and says, I remember before the release, Simu and Margot said Isquaz hyperfem, but Mattel and Warner Brothers tried to retract their statements as if they were scared people would find out the surprise. Yeah, well, I mean, probably. Like I said, we'll see. Hopefully it tanks after this weekend. Hopefully it's just a case of people got fooled and now they're, pissed and they're going to tell their friends not to go see it because they got tricked into giving money to commies, but we'll see. Thank you guys for that, and now we're going to get to the last story. Unfortunately, I don't have the article in front of me, but it's okay. I'll just read it here. So this is a woman has been reunited with her father after being kidnapped by her mother when she was 4 years old. US-based Fuka discovered her mother lied to her through a chain of events. In 2022, Fuka learned she was still a Japanese citizen and flew to Japan to see her maternal grandmother. There she found a picture of her biological father, but had no idea where he was. On a whim, she decided to share the picture on TikTok to try and locate him, which went viral. And she eventually did find her father through the help of TikTok users. Her mother had told her they had moved to America because her father had abandoned them. Fuka explains, quote, "Before he told me anything, he did say there are two sides to every story. Your mom might have a different perspective, but this is how I feel. My grandparents are Buddhist priests, and we have a Buddhist temple in Japan where the temple gets passed down every generation, and it's been in our family for hundreds of years. So my mom was going to take over the temple next, and so her husband, my father, went to go and get his temple certification, and when he came back, we were gone. Fuka's father had gone to America to try and get her back. Both of her parents came back to Japan as their visas expired and they officially divorced. Fuka's mother convinced her father to give her full parental rights, and her father compromised on the one condition that they remain in Japan. Yet her mother moved back to the States to live with her new partner and his family. Fuka says, "I was separated with my dad at 4 and grew up in an abusive household. I often felt unloved and worthless as a child, but I learned to cope with my childhood trauma. As a kid, I thought my dad did not want us in his life and had abandoned us, but this whole time he had been praying one day to reunite. I never knew how much I mean to him and his family until I met them. They had kept their memories of me alive, hoping I would come back. When I was leaving, my dad burst into tears and hugged me, telling me how grateful he is to have me in his life. I didn't know what I was missing until now."
Wow, it's such an odd occurrence where you can say, "What a nice thing that happened on TikTok."
Yeah, I know, right? That is kind of weird. That is kind of weird. So I don't know. I thought it was wholesome. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
It was nice. It's a nice breath of fresh air to round things out with.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? All right. Well, I will show a picture of this was on TikTok. I guess it is the only good thing that came out of TikTok. Maybe. I don't know. It's better than the NPC trend. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is the daughter. She showed some photos. I guess there's a gallery we can look at. And she found that her mother cheated on her biological father and tried to basically take her. Well, she did for like 20 years. Took her to America. So, and now she's reunited with her dad. Fathers matter. That's all I'm saying. This is a good way to, like, you know, end the show, because I know I did a lot of ranting and I apologize because we did go a little long, but I just wanted to get all that off my chest. So let me know what you guys think about this. His father looks young for his age. You know, Asian people, man, I don't know, man. They age really well. That's all I'm going to say.
They look like they're in their 20s until they hit the age of 60, in which they grow a Snow White Fu Manchu. And
something about, they got the genes, man. Like, you know, they say black don't crack. I don't know what the equivalent for, you know, I don't know.
Rice stays nice.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what you guys think about that one in the comments. I'm going to wrap it up here and go into the patron show where we will be looking at this article, at least for about an hour at the most, maybe like 45 minutes, which is entitled Gen Z Want to Work Lazy Girl Jobs. Who can blame them? If you guys want to join us in the patron show, you have to become a member by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, where you'll be able to watch the shows. And if you get higher levels, you can actually join us in the panel and discussion. So thanks guys so much for that. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you guys in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. holy shit, you're fucked.